Welcome to Design Unconventionally. This is a design-based podcast where we unravel the mysteries of design with the masters of the field. Today, in this episode, we have Upamanyu Bhattacharya with us. He is an animator, filmmaker, a comic artist, and an illustrator. He co-directed Wade, an animated short film, and he's also the co-founder of Ghost Animation Studios. He is one of the most creative storytellers of our time. He shared his works and experiences and gave insights into various important aspects and future scope of animation short film. The discussion also focused upon why it is important for a filmmaker to tell stories that has universal concerns. I'll highly recommend you to listen to the full episode. Upamanyu Bhattacharya on the show tonight. Enjoy. So, good afternoon, sir. Welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
We know that you're pretty famous. You have a great online presence with the blue tech and all.
Okay.
Yeah, we did some research. So, starting off, we know that you work with Ghost Studios.
Mm-hmm.
And starting off, would you call yourself a director, an animator, or a storyteller?
I mean, currently, I am very literally a director currently because I am directing a project. I tend to, I try not to label it and stuff because there are like a lot of these LinkedIn definitions of what each of these things mean. But as of right now, there is a film project. Its director is me. I'm the director, so that's where I'm at currently.
So, you'll call yourself a director.
For now, yeah, for now.
Talking about tags, you said. So, we all know about Wade.
Uh-huh.
We have all seen it. So, which genre will you tag Wade as?
Okay, well, we were pitching it as a climate change horror story, so that's how we made a lot of the decisions that we made. So, like, I guess there are thriller aspects to it. There's it does borrow some horror tropes. It borrows some documentary tropes. So, just like a lot of things come together in that. So,
Wade is based in Kolkata.
it is, yeah.
So, why did you choose Kolkata, or did you face any restrictions while writing the story? As in, you based it in Kolkata, or as in, why?
Well, I'm from there and I kind of like the place. So, like, from that, what happens is when you try to, there's not a lot of futuristic storytelling around my city. Like, there is a lot of nostalgia. There's a lot of, like, this is what it used to look like, and there are the trams, and there are the this, that. But no one's stopped to really think about what the future of this city looks like. And the moment you start thinking about that, climate change is right there, and it's kind of this gigantic elephant in the city, which needs to, it's just kind of staring at us, and it's a concern. And if you fast forward to what my life in the city will look like several years hence, when I'm older, when I potentially have children, like all of that stuff, and you're like, is this place going to be ready? Is it a good place to be? Overall, like, is this part of the world ready for what's coming? And it just like, the more you think about that, the more that snowballs in a way, and it kind of just keeps you awake at night after a point. And that was the itch that led to the film, really. And we wanted to, like, we were obviously terrified. Like, we did a lot of scholarly reading as well. There's a lot of published work out there about climate change futures specific to these parts of the world. The problems that we'll face, economically speaking, socially speaking, all of those. It's not just flood water, but it's everything that leads to. So from that point of view, like, it was when that thinking reached a certain point that we had thought a lot, that we had images to put to those thoughts, and we had a model, and we had a universe where we wanted to set our story. So yeah.
So, was Wade as in a story-driven output or a character-driven output?
Well, I think it was neither, because I think it was one of those rare environment-driven, literally and like structurally speaking, where we had the logic of the environment, which you could say acts as a character, in the film where it's the circumstances around the climate change, the history that the space has been through, that has led it to this point. That's what really drove the situation and what drove uh, the whole problem in the story, like the whole standoff, the whole conflict, and everything. It happens because of the setting more than anything. So yeah, it was probably that, like, environment as a character in a way. So.
Okay, so you started Go Studios. So will you call yourself an entrepreneur?
It's tricky because, like, I haven't really prenured much in that sense, in terms of uh, building a business, like using business strategies. Like, obviously a lot of the things we've done have had business like elements to it, but I don't think obviously there is a short film to show at the end of it, but again, I don't think going by the definitions of here is a product that we can consistently sell and upgrade and refine business practices and scale. Most importantly, like, scale is something I find myself profoundly uninterested in. So from that point of view, probably not so much. There are obviously, yes, we have a GST number and stuff like that, but like not enough to uh, for me to sit at the entrepreneur's table. So
I get
yeah.
it. You had an idea, but you're not interested in the business side of things.
It's not that I'm not interested in the business side of things. Like, obviously film has a commerce angle to it, whether it's from the funding, whether it's what you're going to end up doing with it. That does interest me by definition. But again, I think entrepreneurs seek to build organizations more than organizations that last, and organizations that scale, and organizations that are able to solve greater problems. It's that organizational aspect of it, of scale in particular, which is almost synonymous with, whenever you see an entrepreneur, you associate them with rounds of funding, and then they scale it, and then hopefully at one point they start acquiring other things, and there's that whole life cycle of what an entrepreneur seeks to do, which is what I have very little relationship with personally. So
We talked about weight, but in general, you have done many projects. So are they story driven or character driven? In general, not about weight.
in general, I find it quite fun to work with characters in general. Whether, like, that's where my interest area is. That's what I think drives me to the kind of work I do. It's people. It's what they do. It's how they think. The choices they make. So broadly, like, I'm not such a plot person. Not such a uh, not even such a high concept person anymore. Like, where it's the high concept that leads to the characters and situations, like the time flows backwards, all of that stuff. That's not what leads to my stories really, but I find myself, even if it's a music video job or whatever it is, it's about people doing people things. uh, Especially at this stage, it's important to note that Wade happened quite some time back, like, at least the seed of it. So since then, like, I've also had thoda a bit of a character arc. So yeah.
So, as in, you first come up with a character, develop that character, and then build a story around it, or it's the other way around.
No, I think characters being characters, like, bounce off each other in specific ways, and the human experience and the emotions that we experience and the feelings that we have uh, lead to certain kinds of interactions which are fairly universal. And there are some things about those, about specific kinds of those, which are more interesting than others in a way. So I think, what do characters do in such situations is the interesting seed of the question, more than, like, the other way around, I suppose. So
Um, we are also design students, and there is an upcoming generation of design students. There was a generation, and there is the next generation.
always will be.
Yeah.
So.
So all of us take references or inspirations. Do you
Right.
seek references or inspirations while coming up with anything new?
I mean, like, the real world is pretty interesting in that sense, and it's fairly infinite in terms of what it can offer you, whether it's people, spaces, nature, like, all of that stuff. I know, like having a sketchbook habit is something that sounds a little difficult to maintain, but just an active excitement about the real world as is, about people as is, about nature as is, about cities and beaches and sunlight and all of these things. Like, it sounds very floaty, but like it is actually quite interesting, and drawing does enable us to engage with that very directly. So like, I think that's the best source of inspiration to have. And the fact that, and especially once you're open to the idea that based on each of these things you can react differently, you can change up your approach, you can pick up new things along the way, and it doesn't have to be the same all your life. Like, I think that's a very liberating thought, and I think good work comes from that space more than anything. Like, I find myself not usually like seeking artistic inspiration, because there are obviously so many people doing so many good things, but like, I'm more interested in, for example, if they are doing really great work, I'd love to be able to work with them and not like if you know what I mean. So yeah.
So you talked about other artists. Which is your favorite director or any movie?
Oh yikes, that's just didn't come prepared for that. Like that, there's a lot of stuff you watch of late. Like, it keeps changing. At least as of the last couple of years, like the my project development residency had assigned a mentor called Reza, who made a very beautiful film called The Musician. I really liked what he did with that, and that's, I think, one of the examples of something I recently liked a lot. So yeah, and even our film was in competition with thanks to the fact that we had a festival campaign. Like, thanks to that, I ended up watching another short film by another mentor of another project in the same residency called Adrian, and his film Genius Loci was also doing the rounds, and it was Oscar nominated as well. It did really well for itself. So even that was, again, entirely polarly different from the concerns of what Reza's film did, technique wise, concerns wise, everything, but like really beautifully done. So those two films in particular, which I watched in the last year, and especially having met the people as well, like, they did make quite an impact. So I love the work that they do.
So these films inspired you somehow.
It's I feel it's like it's rolling, isn't it? Like, it's not like you constantly, and especially in the current paradigm of constant exposure, whether you like it or not, like, you are constantly watching work that is really good, and there are artists who are really good, and you're constantly absorbing a little bit or the other. So like, it's hard to trace, especially nowadays. Like, I think back in the day, like, even when I was a student, you could trace it back to, like, yeah, there is a particular blog that I really like, but nowadays, like, you're just scrolling and there's just so much stuff that's just coming to you almost involuntarily, that like now it's very difficult to be like, yeah, that's where I got inspired.
You talked about scrolling.
Scrolling.
So I'll ask one thing. Have you ever opened Pinterest?
I do not know how that software works. I just do not get it. I don't understand how people use it. I feel extremely old and out of sorts whenever I see people say, "Yeah, you don't have a Pinterest board." Like, send me the Pinterest board. There isn't a Pinterest board, so like, that's always a little hard. So I like, if you do you use it? Like,
Most of people do.
okay. Oh, okay. That's news. Huh. Yeah.
People use it for inspiration.
Inspiration. Okay. Yeah. No, that I was left on the platform when that train left. So like, yeah.
So we talked about Wade. What was your vision for Wade, and you released it? And do you think that vision is accomplished? What you wanted to achieve with it, have you achieved it?
Well, I mean, it's not like we had any delusions about the fact that it would solve climate change. So like, we did know that it's a very small piece of media with likely limited reach. So I mean, I feel like we did know the limitations of what we were doing and didn't have delusions of grandeur about what it's going to accomplish. But I do feel that that's also like fairly important to do. Like, a lot of the issues we currently talk about and are concerned about is because many people contributed to the pile of discourse that just makes that subject much more visible and gives it more traction and all of that stuff. So I think in that sense, like, where like it added to storytelling around climate change, I'm happy that it did that, and I'm happy enough that it found an audience. I am yet to screen it in like significantly climate sensitive areas and see what their, like for example, we had one screening in the Sundarbans, but we weren't there for it, and we weren't able to like see, because they're living with the problem currently. Like whenever there's a cyclone that comes in from the Bay of Bengal, they're the first people to have everything turned upside down, and it's very like, so we haven't been able to directly interact with them, and that's a shortcoming of both our distribution process and the way we approached putting it out there. Access to short films is difficult. Like it's a problem really, but it's not I don't feel like we worked that problem well enough to give it to the people who might have interesting reactions to it. Like, yeah. So.
There's one character in the film who's wearing a mask.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So that happens in Calcutta, they transform, they take it transform, that happens. So what was the choice of using?
No, that's something they actually do in the Sundarbans. It's very, it's a technique where they have the standardized plastic mask, which, so a major component of the Sundarbans economy is honey. Almost entirely off the books, but there's huge amounts of bees and flowers in that area. So like honey is a very profitable resource over there. And how it works is, obviously the tigers are right there. They're especially aggressive in the Sundarbans, and then they don't take kindly to encroachment. Why would they? But so when you are a honey scout or you're scouting in the forest for something, like it's just one of those survival hacks that they use to keep a mask behind their head, so that if a tiger is trying to attack them from behind, they feel like they're being watched. So it discourages attacks from behind. Is something that they try there. Yeah. It's a real world detail. I put very directly into the film.
So, if you had a chance to go back to the pre-production days of Wade and tweak anything, what would you do?
Probably a lot, but like I'm happy to move on as well. Like I don't think I want to go back to the pre-production times of Wade at all. Like that was for several reasons. Like life was very different at the time, so like I'm happy to let it be. Yeah, but obviously, like if you do revisit a film, there's a lot that you would change about it. But that stuff I would apply to a later project, not back there. There's obviously there's a ton of storytelling issues. There's a ton of storyboarding decisions that could have been made differently. There's a ton of animation notes that I would give it right now as well. But you know, that's also a good part of closing a project and moving on, because you have those sensibilities with you moving forward. So
you talked about other projects. Can you give us any hints of what's coming next?
Yeah, I mean, there's an animated feature film that I'm currently working as writer-director on called Heirloom, which is set in Ahmedabad in the 1960s. It's 95 minutes long. So like Wade was 10 minutes long. It took 3.5 years to make, times 9. So that's how. No, but it's a creative and logistical task in and of itself. So we're in the late stages of pre-production. So it's kind of like we can all feel the pre-production wrapping up slowly, and like ready to go to production in that sense. So that's where it's at, and that's my whole life currently. That's all I do. That's my job. That's my everything. So yeah.
So, do you plan to make it a proper commercial big short film? Do you plan on that?
That's not really in my hands, honestly. Obviously it depends on the kind of distribution opportunities it gets for itself, based on its merits, based on the kind of exposure that it gets, based on the steps that we, the filmmakers, take to put it out there. But like where it releases, how it releases, is stuff that's way beyond even my pay grade. So like there are distribution experts for that. There are distribution companies for that, and they will tell us where we stand with the potential distribution of it. So
You talked about pay grades and entrepreneurship. We talked about it.
yeah, we did. Yeah.
How do you manage, as you said, that Wade was 3.5 years of production, and Heirloom is also gonna take time. So in the meantime, how do you manage to pay off the salaries and wages and stuff?
Well, in the case of Heirloom, like a lot of it did come from development grants and such. We have production managers whose full-time problem this is. So they do their jobs and I do mine. And in that situation, it's their responsibility to take care of a lot of things, including like how much work people are doing overtime. Uh, again, if we have a deadline for something and we work backwards from that problem, how many people do we need doing how much work for how much time, and how much work are they doing per day, week, all of that. So it's basically one grand unitary method problem. So like that's again, it's something I leave to the people who are good with that. And there is a very very significant role for production management in all films, like whether it's live action or animated, and it's really good to have people who understand that working with you.
So you know that all this hassle was going to come. So why did you decide to start your own studio in the first place? Why not, go to the industry?
Yeah. I guess there's just a certain bunch of things you want to do, and it usually just starts with a fairly optimistic conversation, and that sets the ball rolling, and then you've kind of swam out into the sea and you can't see the shoreline anymore. And there's a lot of very happy aspects to working this way, to working with creatives from across the board, and like working on your own time and using your project again as a means of answering questions for yourself and creatively speaking, like as in what kind of so, and once you've done that, it's a little tricky to go back. So it's not that since I've started these projects, I haven't taken gigs, I haven't taken jobs. I do take commissions once in a while, and then that becomes a whole balancing act. But I don't think ever since we started, at least, like because it was exciting, it was uncharted territory. We didn't know how it would end up. We didn't have a whole lot of information as to how to go about these things, and we were finding out a lot of things on the fly. It was good fun, and we were surrounded by very good people as well, who contributed and were encouraging and supportive. And uh, you know like there is a pessimism to working in this industry, or in which applies to any industry. I guess you could be a pessimistic healthcare professional as well, and you can be like, the system and all of that. But eventually, like, there are problems that you can solve on a micro scale. And again, coming back to the thing of scale, like, I don't think at any point we were like, yeah, we need to be the next Pixar or anything. We were just like, we'll make this film. Like, that's all we need to do. We need to, yeah, step by step, small thing at a time, do it small, do it well, and keep everyone happy while you're at it. Like, none of us went into it with the intention of, like, yes, we shall have skyscraper offices and 17,000 employees, and that wasn't the plan at all. So, like, I think that itself eliminated a lot of potential concerns and made life simpler, because that's something I don't even find myself wanting right now. I do hope that after Heirloom is done, everyone just goes their own way, and does other things that they like to do, and they don't have to be working here forever. So I'm cool with that, and I understand that there are some people who do want to build something that lasts, and their concerns are different, but those are not those aren't the things that keep us awake.
So you talked about the industry. Any word of caution or a disclaimer that you would give to anyone who's about to enter this industry, this field of design in general?
Okay, this is like a word of encouragement within it's a positive within the negative. So it's going to be that, like, there is a lot of pessimism out there, which you need not subscribe to. That's what I would say. Like, there's a lot of negative stereotypes that exist about our work, about our working patterns, about the life we have when we start doing this kind of work. But none of those are they don't have to be that way, really. You can get paid well, you can pay well, you can do your work while maintaining a happy and healthy life as well. Like all of those, like there is a lot of negativity that keeps people away in a way, or like, and obviously that negativity exists for a reason, because there are problems once you enter. Uh, there are situations of underpayment, non-payment. Bad things happen when you work commercially. Things get stolen. I'm not saying those problems don't exist, but those problems do have solutions, and uh, we're still here in a way. So like, and a lot of information about how to circumvent those problems is now getting more and more discussed, more and more open sourced. So it needn't be something that keeps you away for good. And especially even if bad things happen, support systems are slowly coming into place, which will help you continue, and not like uh, like at all such stages when you have a bad experience, you may be like, okay, that's it, I'm done. Or you can be like, okay, I'll use the support systems available to me, I'll take the help that's needed and fix slash move on from this, and then continue doing what I do in this space without leaving it altogether. And like the longer one hangs around, the likelier good things are to happen. In that sense, like the longer good people hang around, work together, the more likely it is that nice work will come out of that.
So you talked about the negativity and the stereotypes. Do you think the world or the audience or the users in general will anytime soon stop stereotyping, stop spreading the negativity in general?
I don't think it's the audience. Like I said earlier, those stereotypes do exist for a reason. Like payment is a problem. It's there. It's a thing. So it's more about like the industry practices there, and this is something that like especially you guys about to enter said industry are in of like you have a fair degree of leverage to change that, because work practices moving forward will be what you say they should be. So if there are negative practices that you choose to perpetuated they shall be in a way. But if you decide that the buck stops here and we do need to change this around, and as a community we share information, we're going to be like, okay, this is stuff that we do not do any longer. That's something you can highly do, and like so really the industry will be what you guys will make of it in a way, which is quite exciting. So it's hopeful only. I don't think it's that bad. Yeah.
And lastly, any word of advice for the upcoming people?
All of this that I just like, but more than anything, like I think it's a very beautiful field to be in, especially like obviously I can speak to animation, but like all creative fields, everything that you study here from graphics onwards has a huge number of people doing very nice stuff. It's a very like it can be a hostile industry, but a lot of it is also very welcoming. There's a lot of very nice people willing to share, willing to help you grow, and you will find the help that you need if you ask for it. And it's going to be okay. Basically, I think even when we graduated, we weren't didn't have a very clear picture of how it would go, and I understand that's very intimidating. I understand that there's not a huge amount of set information that definitely is known to work. But again, there are like because there are so many people doing such good work, it is very likely that you will be able to find your tribe. You'll be able to find the kind of work that you want to do, and it's going to be okay. So like just do like don't leave before we get started. I guess like and things are going to get better and better, especially because like I said earlier, that onus is on you to make said stuff better. So it is quite a it's a very hopeful place to be. It's I think what we do is beautiful. Like I have no like concerns about that. Like I think it's important and valid and wonderful, and like the world is a better place for it, no doubt. But like you have to be around to do that work. Like we'd hate to like we do lose a lot of people to different fields because again of industry practice, because of all of that stuff. But all of these problems can be worked on. We can fix them, make them better, and continue doing the kind of work we do. It's gonna be okay. That's the
Let's hope so.
yeah.
So, anything that you'd like to change about the design education system? Anything?
Well, I mean, I've had unexperience as a design student, and I understand that that does not represent the totality of the design student experience. But so I don't know how it's done in different places. Like I went to a college. Uh, like maybe you can tell me because you're currently like, how's it going for you? Like, what are the things that you? So far so good. You're happy and like.
Let's say.
All right, fair enough. Because, like, obviously, especially like currently, I mean, I'm about to teach a course at the same college I graduated from, and in that capacity, there are things, both micro and macro, which you're like, yeah, I had a bad time with this, and I would like for it to be not such a bad time, no, like. And that's you do make those changes, especially when you're in a teaching capacity. But like, I do feel we could do with across the board a little more encouragement and optimism. I feel like I'm from that school of teaching which doesn't believe in demolishing work and being like everything is terrible, you know nothing. Like I do feel like being encouraging and nurturing is more of the need, because then we know we can continue, we know we can carry on, and we can. And I do guess a certain degree of personalization based on, like, I don't think everyone is good at everything, and they need not be. And just the idea that that's also okay, that like, okay, these particular skills are not your thing, but what is your thing? Let's find it on an individual basis. I understand that's a problem when it comes to scale, and especially when you're like, okay, we need to get 150, 200, 300, 500 students out of here. That's a problem. Like, obviously, it's not like everyone can't have like a custom built course for themselves, but it is a best case scenario that I do like to think about. Yeah, that's all I got really.
Thank you so much for being with us. It was a very good session. I hope our listeners also get something out of it for the best. Thank you so
I
much.
hope so too. Yeah, thanks for having me. Been a pleasure.
It was a nice session. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.